Hello, everyone. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher. I'm here with my beautiful co-host, Janis Gillham Grady. How you doing today, Janis?
G'day, everybody. I'm doing good, Mark.
That's good. That's good.
Nice day here in Las Vegas. Puppies on the couch sleeping. Everything's silent, so we can do this.
All right, great. Well, we've got a new guest. First time we've interviewed him that we're going to bring on here, and he was a former Scientologist. He was in the Scientology and all that, and then since then he has left, and he does other types of counseling, and he's a PhD, and he's written books. He's an author and all that, but he also has spoken out against Scientology. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring on our guest. And his name is Brian Sheen. How you doing, Brian?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Nice to be here with both of you.
Yeah, nice good to meet you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to start.
Connections after all these years.
Yes.
Exactly.
I keep hearing your name, and finally there's someone to talk to with that name.
There we go. Now we'll see how that works.
Well,
exactly.
People probably mistaken, oh, Sheen, you must be related to Martin or Charlie Sheen, right?
All the time. And I say, shh, I can't talk about it.
I didn't even get the connection.
Well, Sheen, yeah.
I
try to make the connection to Bishop Fulton J. Sheen for those who are from New York, but that doesn't go over well either.
I understand. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. How did you get in Scientology? Obviously, you got in back in the 70s, right?
I had a great experience on an LSD trip, and I was at a Pink Floyd concert, and they were releasing this new album. Most people, even today, as popular as they became, they weren't very popular back then, not like they are today. They're legendary. Back then they were who? Pink what?
Right.
But they had come up with this album, and if you've never listened to it, it's called Atom Heart Mother, and it's fabulous. Well, before all their other big hit stuff, and they had a choir there, and they had a horn section there, and it was the first surround sound, and I was peaking on LSD and had an out-of-body experience, and was on the ceiling watching the whole thing with full perception. It was magnificent experience. And at the end of this experience, I heard this voice. And the voice said, "It's not the drugs." And this was the impetus for me to go on a spiritual journey to find out, well, then what is it? And it was like, there was no questioning this inner voice. It was firm, it was clear. And I then went on a journey, and I started going to yoga classes and Hare Krishna this and Gestalt that. And I went on a journey looking for things. And one of those things that I happened to run into was doing this thing called a personality test while outside Macy's in Manhattan. And it was a really cute, asking me these questions and inviting me into, the little local resident hotel where they were housed in order to take this personality test. And they regged me well, they sold me well, they gave me the ideas. But more importantly than that is I did the communications course. And
now, let me ask you, Brian, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
What year was this, and how old were you?
I was I guess 17 or 17. This was 1969.
Okay.
I think 69 or 70. I get the years a little mixed up back then. 17, because I was 1970. And
17 when you found Scientology, you were 17. So you'd already looked into Hare Krishnas and all the other stuff.
Oh, I was doing all that stuff for years, and I was doing lots of LSD and mescaline and all sorts of different experimental drugs because I wanted to know the vast realms of consciousness and the dimensions that it had. And then Scientology got brought to me as a possibility. And I said, okay, I'll try that. and did the first course that most of us, I think, back then did. You started on the communications course.
Yep.
Right.
I had this amazing, I don't know if you know Ben Gibson. Do you know who Ben Gibson is?
No.
Okay. Well, he on the East Coast. You guys are West Coasters, LA, that realm of things. I was, again, New York org, and then eventually advanced org in St. Hill in England. But I did the 2-hour closed eye, what we called OT0, which is basically just meditation.
Right.
And I had a similar out-of-body experience. And it was spectacular. And I said, wow, how fast did I find that answer? And at first I thought somebody drugged me. And then I realized I didn't come down. And, one of the negative parts about any drug is that there is a depletion of many of the nutritious things in your body. And there usually is some type of come down that isn't always pleasant. Let's leave it like that. But there was none of that. And I realized that by doing that process, I experienced that experience, and I said, I gotta know now everything I possibly can. And of course, the perspective of L. Ron Hubbard was as this God. I mean, this visionary, this genius, this iconoclast that was, I love the idea of the rebelliousness of the way that he talked about things, and I found incredible congruity of all of what he was saying, putting together this picture, which was a picture that was not unfamiliar because it's psychosomatic psychology. It comes from Freud. It comes from many other areas. So the workings of that was always of my interest because I've always on my own was studying those types of things and just enjoying for my own purposes. I mean, it wasn't a serious study yet. So that's how I got involved. Where did you get involved, Mark, in LA?
No, actually in Washington, D.C. My dad, I was 14. My dad was retired Navy in 1973, and he read the Dynamics book, and then he went right into the Scientology organization in Washington, and he did training and got auditing for about a year. And then he said, Mark, I think this will really help you. And so he brought me in, and he bought me 12 and a half hours of auditing, and I did the communications course, and I was hooked immediately. I literally, because it changed me. I'm not the same person I was back then. Do you know what I mean? It changed me for a positive thing. And I just had, we were very, we wanted to change the world. You just, when you're young, you want to, you find something that's good. You want everybody to know about it. And that's kind of how I got involved. And then I continued through my high school years, and then eventually joined the Sea Org instead of going to college. But anyway, so what did you do? How was your...
I got hooked in the same way. I mean, we were on the same drug of saving the world, and we didn't realize that we were actually experiencing PTSD on a daily basis every time we saw the number of people that were being killed in Vietnam. I mean, these are traumas, and we were traumatized. And I had a number of being picked to go on a lottery, whether I was going to get drafted and go to Vietnam and maybe be one of those numbers. So we were in this state of trauma, and it's a hypnotic state that is very easy to get somebody because they're fixated on something and they're feeling this experience, and very easy to set this goals. Let's save the world, and you and I can do this, and this is the only way to do that. And we all, I think, bought into that. And I think that's to our credit, that as crazy as that we were, and as crazy as it all was, is that we were ready to dedicate ourselves to put ourselves for this billion-year contract, as crazy as that fucking sounds, right? But I think I just think it's so positive for anybody who's gotten involved to take it that far, to show the kind of resilience that they have, but also determination, intention to unfold and make a change in this world. So I again, when I left with the gratitude of seeing what might be possible. And even though I saw this whole crazy shit, once you got to this body thetan shit and all of this stuff on the OT levels, that just blew everything up.
Right.
That all of a sudden made, the book of past lives that he did back in 51, 50.
Have you lived before this life?
Right. And that took all of that shit and made it center stage, where otherwise it had fallen out of use. I mean, literally faded away, wasn't involved in any of the basic things of many of these things psychologically that had beneficial effects on people.
No, exactly.
They weren't about trying to bring in this crazy fucking shit.
Yeah, we've talked about that, years ago after we left, right? Which is like, it's really more of a self-help type of thing, not into this whole past lives and the body thetans and this and that. That gets way off into that. And the thing is that they never promoted, oh, you're going to be these superpowers or something like that. I mean, they promoted, oh, you can go up the operating, up to the operating thetan levels and all that. But really, it was more about, we're going to clear the planet, and clearing the planet was much lower on the gray chart. It was basically getting rid of people's reactive minds so that they could live and operate in this world, So I understand.
And it's those type of ideals that trapped all of us, because we hooked into it, and it was such a high, expansive type possibility, that we must give credit to that. Janis, what about yourself? Where did you get involved?
I was born into it. My parents were already in.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that, I guess. Okay.
I don't
know much about your background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well, you'll need to read. You should read my 2 books. When you travel, take my books with you and read them on the plane.
It's funny. I never carry a book with me. I only carry my phone with the Kindle app in it. I've given up on.
And you can listen to the audiobooks. Yeah.
It's just they weigh too much. And then all of a sudden you end up paying for them 3 and 4 times over. But I will consider looking at that. But I have to be honest with you, being asked to do your show, I was happy to do that. I'm always happy to talk about it. But I've kind of put Scientology and my whole efforts, I just had to set it aside. I had to disconnect, because it wasn't doing for me anything but keeping the wound open. And in fact, it was Paulette Cooper who suggested it to me. And she said, Brian, you need to bury the dead and move on.
Right.
And she had me read this interesting book on Hasidic family, who had to go through a similar type of thing of disconnection with their family when they left the Hasidic section of the Jewish faith, even though they were still very religious, not religious enough. So sorry, we have to remove you from all our. And Paulette was a real inspiration for me. I resisted that, but on year 7, on the anniversary.
This is Paulette Cooper with you.
Yes.
About the book that Tony Ortega wrote about her life. So anyway.
And she doesn't live very far from me here in Florida.
Oh, okay.
So I've gotten a chance to meet her and her husband, and we've gone out, and she's so delightful, and the things that she's been through is
horrendous.
I mean, it's just too much.
Yes.
I mean,
now what they did to her, it's not good.
Worse than anybody.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that this is the nature of the world that we live. And yes, horrible, but there's so much horror in this world, and it is so horror fear-based and punishment-based and power-based and ego-based, and use whatever. Yes, Scientology sucks, and it does some really horrible, terrible things, but you know what? It's supported by and allowed to do that because society gives it the power. It gives it the tax exemption. Okay, it's not something that happens just. They take it. No, here we grant you this. We grant you this, and then we allow you to get away with this and to get away with this. So what does it tell us about the society? I mean, and I hope I don't stick my foot into it, but what does it tell you about society whose leading candidate has 91 indictments against him, and is still leading the president in one of the greatest economic times we've had since being locked down. We should be grateful and thankful. Forget about names and parties. Hey, there's a lot more abundance. I don't know.
Well, we don't want to go into politics.
We don't get into politics.
Good. Okay.
Let me ask you, Brian. Brian, I want to get you back on the subject. Okay. So,
yes, please.
Back, because this is great. This is all, I love all of this, right? But so you did the communications course. So did you join staff or the Sea Org? I mean, what did you actually do?
So I did the communications course and I really liked it. And then I did the HQS course, the Hubbard Qualified Scientologist course, which is kind of like the second beginner course. And I really enjoyed that. And then I signed up and to do level 0 auditing. And I loved it.
You mean as an auditor or as somebody?
As an auditor, yeah. And as an auditor, then you start getting auditing and you co-audit with somebody. So now I was experiencing it. And to me, a lot of my work was done through co-auditing because I couldn't afford the auditing. And and then through the training, I got a lot more insight into it. And I found it fascinating. And I still think today, the book Self-Analysis, I think it's an absolutely wonderful book of just exploring the dimensions of the mind. It's a very clear, very simple, but gets a person to look at perceptions and chains and these are all Freudian type things, but it's done very well, I think.
Brian, I'm doing this. Anyway, just for our viewers' sake, okay, level 0 so that they know, that's communication. That deals with communication, and it's the processing that you do on somebody so that they're able to communicate from anywhere, any place, whatever, and not have any hang-ups or anything that's making them withhold communication or suppress communication or anything like that. And just so you know, I mean, like when I was 15 years old and I did this, that auditing, it really changed my life as well. I couldn't be doing this show right now if I hadn't done that. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I know. No, Mark, I'm a very shy person. I was.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore. Janis, please.
Yeah, I want to bring up Self-Analysis book. That is the book that got my dad convinced to do Scientology. My mother had tried to get him in through Dianetics, but it was the Self-Analysis book that clinched it for him, and he dedicated the rest of his life.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine, but what I can't imagine, I don't know. I always had reservations, and I was very fortunate to start in New York, to go to England, where I went to England very recently for one reason: the courses were cheaper there than to go to LA, and plus, guess what? I'm in England. Yeah, baby. I mean,
the Beatles and Rolling Stones.
Everything. It was great, and I was able to get and live in the house of a Scientologist and his family. And I had this little room that I rented, and I bought my first little car, this little Ford something, and it was just like I paid £60 for it. I remember. Okay. And I was living the dream, man. And having my fishing.
What year was this?
Huh?
What year was this about? Do you remember?
1970.
Okay.
Yeah. 1970, 71. And I loved everything. I mean, living and studying at this castle, and it was all positive in many ways until all of a sudden I starting to see some weird shit that didn't relate to me, which some things going on in the Sea Org that I didn't understand, but I didn't have to understand it because I was public.
Right.
You were paying for your services or
paying
training.
Public.
You weren't a staff member, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't until I was later than Reg to become a Sea Org member, and I had been doing very well, and I was going to be the supervisor, the case supervisor for AS for United Kingdom, but the whole thing down to Australia. And they were training me up to then go to class 8 HSST, class 9. to do class 9, and then I went to Flag once I got recruited in order to do that training.
So
So
eventually
you were
joined
a
the
Flag on the
organization?
internship.
Yes, I was in Flag on the
Okay.
internship. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now when you say
For
Flag,
for St. Hill.
Right.
okay, but
right.
when you're talking about Flag, Janis and Brian, you're talking about the ship, right? The Apollo.
Yes.
You're not
absolutely.
talking
The
about
ship.
Clearwater. This is before Clearwater. This is
This is before
Apollo.
Clearwater.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is on the Apollo.
Yeah, this is out, where we were in basically in one of the islands in Spain and in Porto, in El Porto and Lisbon in Portugal. And and this is me.
Yes.
In Lisbon, 1971, after I cut my hair short. That's short.
Oh, okay.
You're not even 20 years old there.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
And my love of traveling, obviously, now here I am at this young age with this excitement in these places, England, Spain, Portugal, living on a ship, doing this advanced research and who the fuck knows what. It was cool. It was fun. Even though it was a little crazy living in cramped quarters, because we had no space. We were, in a dorm. So,
yes,
the amount of space is basically open my arms and maybe there's 2 shelves. That's it.
If you're lucky, there was 2 shelves.
And so were you a trainee? Were you a trainee?
I was a trainee. I was an intern. Okay. Yeah. And I had great experiences. I had a chance to be able to intern under Quentin. And I did my Class 8 CS internship, my HSST internship under Quentin, and he was incredible.
Now, let me ask you, because I always ask people who went to the ship on the Apollo, do you remember meeting or seeing L. Ron Hubbard for the first time, or what was your experience on the ship?
Yeah, I did. It was a party. There was a big party because he had just come back to the ship. He had been off the ship for many months while I first arrived. And it was always about some type of research that he's doing and some reason he needed to be grounded on the land. It's always some big, great story.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, though,
the truth of it was that he fell off his
motorcycle
and he was recuperating. But they didn't tell that to us.
Oh, well, that was the
motorcycle.
That was the end of 1973.
Whatever it was, he was not on the ship when I was there, and then he came to the ship, and the first time I met him was at this party, and there he was, bigger than life.
Okay.
And it was a little overwhelming for me. But it was really cool.
Oh, so the Spanish islands would have been the Canary Islands, Las Palmas.
It was
and Tenerife.
It wasn't Tenerife, it was the other one.
Madeira?
No. I'll give you the name in a second.
Okay. Yeah, because 1973 he was in New York and he came back in.
Yeah, I don't think that was the case. But again,
who knows? Who remembers?
That's
all
when
this
he
stuff?
had. Well, that's when he had the motorbike accident.
Right.
Well, again, I put that information in later because I never knew anything about it until many, many years later when this stuff came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of put it in because that was never talked about.
He wouldn't have known. Yeah.
They wouldn't tell us because he was invincible. You see, that was the whole thing. He's invincible. Okay. He's OT8, full powers. And that was part of the way that we idolized. Wow, he's got all this power. Okay. Has all these advanced abilities. When, again, this was all delusional, but we didn't know that. You know, you buy into that as anyone does in a cult with the leader. And it's, it's not just about religious cults. It's about political cults. It's about cults of every this is a world filled with cults of influencers. They're the cult leaders. We
Well,
call
and I
them
would imagine,
influencers now.
and I would imagine, I never met him. I communicated with him by dispatch and all that, but I never met him. But I can imagine if I met him, it probably, like you said, it would be overwhelming to me, because you were close to the guy who you thought was going to save the world, right? I mean, it'd be like meeting the president of the United States, and he's in the same room with you, and you get to actually have a conversation with him, or live and be on the same ship with him, right? I mean, similar type of thing, right? Pretty overwhelming.
No, absolutely. It's there is this awe, a state of awe, which is an awe by its nature is hypnotic, because it creates a fixation of your attention on that object,
Right.
and that's what hypnosis is fixation on an object, and you just do that, and people do that and worship so many things,
Yeah.
and people and ideologies and ideas, and but that was my state, and I didn't realize how deep it was. Believe it or not, it's crazy it is. I like to look for the benefits of anything that might have happened from this horrible loss of disconnection that happened out of the blue almost 8 years ago. And one of the things that really made me say, I never would have known this. I never would have known about this active group of people that they were all over the world, connected through all of these, whether it's the underground bunker or the other types of ways and communications of things that Janis has done, and so many things that you've done, Mark, and so many others have done, what things that Mike has done and Leah has done, and there's so many major names that have kind of taken this and brought this and said, no, we're not going to take that anymore. We're at least now going to speak up and have our peace, and let you know, we got some benefits here, but none of that justifies all this craziness shit.
No.
This is, there's never justification for how that you have taken the reverse of everything that you say you stand for, and
exactly
and that in this world, and then say, no, we're not doing that. If you think that we're doing that, then there's something wrong with you, and you're our enemy. So we have to declare you, because we can't ever look within and own that we make a mistake. And that's what megalomania is.
It's really, it pops your bubble, because we put up, or at least I put up with it to some degree, but I didn't know all the lies and all the stuff that was going on. Nobody did. I mean, it was all kept quiet, right? But it got to the point where I went, okay, Miscavige, who had taken over for Hubbard after he died. First of all, there were a lot of Hubbard things that were like crazy, and I was going, well, it's just, whatever, we'll just keep moving on. But then when Miscavige started doing things that I knew were actually wrong, physically abusing people, things like that, I went, I'm out of here. I'm not going to stick around for that. It burst the bubble of what we were doing for me. You know what I mean? And then disconnection. I had to disconnect from my family, and then they disconnected. It just went, oh, I'm not involved with that.
Mark, when I was not there at all when Miscavige took over, so I know nothing about his reign, because I was already long gone.
When did you leave? When did you leave Scientology?
Well, I guess I officially left. Wow. I want to say 1982.
Okay. Oh, okay. Then how did your daughter end up in Scientology?
Well, because her mother was my ex-wife, moved out to California. And I had originally had a center, a Dianetics counseling group in West Palm Beach, which her mother ran with me. And she was really good bookseller.
Okay.
Won all the awards. No, she was very good at it. And so I left, but she went to California, and she stayed involved with Scientology. And there was never a problem, because if this is what they wanted to do, hey, listen, whatever you want to do, do it. I also taught my daughter meditation. A Course in Miracles. I taught her about some of the quantum sciences. I would hire her to do projects with me because I was recording, and I at that point everything was fine, and I just looked at that. Hey, that was an experience in my life. It was what it is. But again, I didn't have the depth of the fraud and the abuse. I had no clue because there was no internet, there was no books, and I personally didn't give a shit. Honestly, it was over. It was out of my life. I was like, if my daughter finds something valuable in it, good for her. Okay, do what you like. Okay,
is that you and your daughter there?
For you, okay, and you know I meditate and I do yoga and I use hypnosis in different ways and I use many different spiritual practices. Okay, and epigenetics and neuroscience, and that's me. Because I was encouraged to go to the source where Hubbard said he got his information. I wanted to read the Vedas. I wanted to go to India, and I went to India, and I spent years on and off going to India for my whole life, studying with gurus, with masters of meditation, of the Vedantic ways, of wanting to understand. I've gone through South America and I've gone through Africa, and I spent lots of times with shamans and experiencing, not like what he talks about in his biography.
Yeah, I was going to say, you actually did what he said he did.
I find it humorous.
I live with bandits. I live with pygmies and whatever.
Yeah, but Brian's done more than he even said he did.
No, I know. I'm just
a lot more.
Yeah. But for me, I was always felt gratitude. Thank you for getting me in that way. Yeah, it is what it is. But then when the disconnection came, and for me, when I got that in the mail, I guess it's almost 9 years ago to the day. It was like out of the blue. What? Disconnection for what?
Now, is this you and your daughter here, and this is right before the disconnection, or what?
Right before the disconnection. My daughter and I, we got on so well. We had wonderful time as father and daughter, and I was always there as her counsel to help her, to be with her every year, because I've recorded a number of songs and music. So I was also I was part of the Grammy committees, and so I was able to go out for the Grammys each year, and we'd go out there, and every year we'd go to the Grammys and we'd have fun together, and we'd go out vintage clothes shopping and we had great times together. We shared similar beliefs, and she liked Scientology. I said, fine. I like yoga. I like neuroscience. I like epigenetics. And she says, no problem. That's right. We had no problem. I never stood in her way. I was at the wedding, okay, just a few months earlier at their wedding to a Scientologist in San Francisco. Yeah, there's the wedding. And I met her parents. I didn't know the Atkinson's Bakers were a bunch of VIP Scientologists that donate millions and millions. I had no idea. I heard that they were bitching about paying for the dinner beforehand for the wedding dinner. And they certainly didn't come off as anybody who had any money. But again, we had just very little interaction. They seemed, again, her mother was there, Jennifer, who's again my ex-wife, and we get on too. I met her boyfriend. I mean, everything's good and friendly.
Right.
And then out of the blue.
Why? Why did they make her disconnect from you?
Well, my perception is this. She's now married to money. She didn't have it, but now she is now a valuable resource for going up and paying for the bridge, because she's got, the parents, her parents-in-laws are very rich, which makes her husband obviously somewhat well off, and he's doing all the OT levels. So I think she had a chance to be able to tap into that. And now they really gave scrutiny for family stuff.
Who are your connections?
So she was not staff or Sea Org, she was public.
At that time, she was public. She had been Sea Org when she was 18, but that was like 12 years earlier. No, she stayed in the Sea Org for about a year and a half, 2 years, when they put down the new rule policy that you could no longer have children in the Sea Org. She wanted to leave with her husband. Instead, she divorced him and said, "No, I want to have children."
I see.
So this is a different husband.
This is a different husband. He's a Scientologist whose parents are VIP Scientologists who've donated on the order of $15 to $20 million.
Right. No, that's the cash cow for Miscavige.
Yeah.
Oh, they're donors. Yeah, we want to keep them happy. Meanwhile, they look into her background and go, well, we can't be having her connected to her father, who I guess at that time you had been out of Scientology. Had you done anything that they considered, had they declared you a suppressive person or anything?
When I first left, when you leave the Sea Org, you all get declared. I mean, there's no question
not necessarily. You get a freeloader debt, but yeah.
Well, you get a freeloader debt.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I paid off my freeloader debt. I did get declared once and then undeclared when an amnesty came through.
Okay.
And so I was in good standing.
Okay.
But here's the thing. And this is, as I've now looked back from the information I've gotten from all of these sites, from both of you and many others in similar circumstances, I realize now a lot of the secretive nature of the documents and things we filled out are not. They're not sacred religious information that cannot be divulged. They use it, and they took my amnesty write-up.
Right.
And it's from that they created my declare 30 years later.
Wow.
Oh, basically all the stuff that you quote unquote confess to in your amnesty write-up, because in order to get an amnesty, you have to confess any crimes against Scientology or a thing. And then you get forgiven. They're supposed to be forgiven.
One of those crimes was calling the police after my daughter Spring was kidnapped from daycare. We did not know by who. We could not find out anything. And so I went to the police in order naturally to do that. But it turns out it was her mother who took a train from California to Florida. She came and picked her up, didn't tell me, and then got back on a train. So there was no names or anything. And for a week, I did not know where my daughter was, no communication. But my Jennifer, her mother, thought that I wasn't going to return her after the visitation, which I always had. It's been going on for years already. There was no threat.
Right.
And she later apologized for it, but I was an SP for calling the police to look after my daughter.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
you did the natural thing that any human being would do, or any parent would do. And then
later, her mother did apologize to me.
Right.
Okay, 35 years later.
Right.
After she had left Scientology, or she's still
involved.
Oh, okay.
No, she's out in California. That's part of the whole thing. My daughter was put in a situation where her mother, her husband, all of her friends, all of her business connections for the last 40 years, they're all Scientologists.
Yeah.
Walking away from all of that, I mean, that's a lot of peer pressure and a lot of value. I have nothing to offer her like that. I mean,
right.
I'd love to have her and she'd always be welcome where I am, but I can't sit there and replace what that all is to her, her mother, husband, and then it was always deemed most likely because of the wealthy grandparents, they would go after the child to make sure that their son, because they don't want their child, right, to be with an SP.
Yes.
So
Right, to be connected to you.
she
Yeah.
literally have to give up her child as well if
Wow.
she would do that. And I mean, this is too much.
Yeah.
Right.
I understand. However, I would hope one day she wakes up and say, anybody who wants to hold that leverage over you to keep you involved with something, something's wrong.
No, you're
Exactly.
right. You're absolutely right. Listen, I understand, because the same thing happened when I left the Science organization in 1990. My sister and her husband were public Scientologists, and I knew they would have to disconnect from me because I was going to be declared. And so, but I understood it. Like, in other words, for me, it was okay that they did that because I understood that, because I knew the rules of the game going in from having been in the Sea Org and being in Scientology. So I didn't really hold it against them. But like you said, once you peel the onion and all that, you start feeling like, why are you choosing this organization? You don't know what's really going on over your family. You know what I mean?
But, Mark, you say something, I just want you to understand a little different perspective. And
Okay.
Janis might be a little bit more of this perspective as well. You see, when I was involved, there was no sense of disconnection. There was no sense of this type of abuse. None of that existed. So where you're saying you kind of knew, you read the room, it was already that way, there's nothing you can do. Well, it wasn't that way earlier.
No. Earlier,
Okay?
you had to handle it.
I had never met an SP. I only heard stories that a few years back something happened to a couple of people. So the idea of disconnection was never used.
Yeah, well, normally, yes, because in those days it was handle, and that meant write a letter, get the people happy that they've heard from you, and just keep writing back and forth.
Good roads, fair weather.
Exactly, and that's all they should be doing these days. We're not suppressive persons, or people like us have taken on doing things that they would consider suppressive because of their failure to communicate and their abuse that they have been doing. And my brother did get declared when he left the gold base. I didn't talk to him for 8 years. And then when I left the Sea Org, I'm like, where do I go? Because everyone I knew was Scientologists. And so I had no one to go to. So I went, okay, I got to talk to my brother. And I showed up on my brother's doorsteps. And he took me in graciously and, was so happy to see me and be able to talk to me. He wasn't an SP, suppressive. No. But, it's all up here.
It's drilled in your brain. Yeah.
Yeah. But you see, and right then and there, one needs to do a critical analysis of, you already brought up, Mark, and I mentioned it, the communications course.
Right.
And the ultimate goal, I still remember this stuff. It's like unbelievable, but my memory and retention of this is to be able to communicate to anywhere on any and anywhere with anyone and anywhere on any subject at any time.
Right. That's
right.
And that is a brilliant mindset to achieve. And even if you achieve it, and we all, I think, may have achieved it for 5 seconds or 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 hours, but whatever it is, however long it lasted, the moment you now say, however, you can talk to anyone, but not them, because they disagree with you. They have different values. They have different goals. Wait a minute.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's like, what? And who else? Oh, by the way, you can't trust them either. They're potential trouble sources. They're not SPs, but they're potentially that.
Well,
so basically,
after being out for a few years and peeling the onion, like we like to say, I came to that same realization. I'm going like, look, if you're a true believer as a Christian or a Jew or Muslim or whatever, if somebody's going to talk to you about, hey, I think there's something wrong with that and this and that and da da da. If you're a true believer, you go like, no, I don't believe that, but thank you for, it doesn't mean I'm not going to talk to you ever again.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the real world, and I'm not going to get into politics, but it's the same thing. You see it all the time where people have one political viewpoint and then somebody else has another one, and they try and convince each other that they're wrong, right? And then one of them will go like, well, I'm not talking to you anymore, and I'm unfriending you, and I'm doing this and that. When you're still friends, there's still, you know what I mean? You can have differences of opinion about certain things, or you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's really crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it's all the shunning. It's just shunning, just like Jehovah's Witnesses do it. Other religious groups all do it. And why? It's not needed. People have different views, and you just don't have to discuss those things.
It doesn't
religion
change
and politics.
It doesn't change your love for them. It doesn't change your feelings towards them over something they think. If you don't agree with it, just agree to disagree and move on, Anyway.
Yeah, that way though, however, will not give you the fuel to light a fire of dissension to create this emotional way of reacting to that oppositional force, which it's either us or them, and if we don't overcome them, they're going to destroy the world. And that takes, and every cult leader in any area that they're having that dominance and manipulation power, it's the same thing.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. It's all about control. You realize that when you really look at it from the outside, the reason they have people disconnect and cut them off is because they want control over that person, that parishioner, whoever it is that they're with. They don't want them hearing the negative stuff and the lies. They're covering it up, and they don't want them to hear that, because any logical person, to be honest with you, if somebody was first getting involved in Scientology and the first thing they told them is like, oh, your problem is that you're encrusted with all these body thetans and that they're basically running and ruining your life, and we can handle those for you, the person will go like, I don't think so. I'm not getting involved with that. But when they do, like, we're going to teach you how to communicate and handle some of your problems and this and that, it becomes very inviting, and that's helpful. But like you said earlier, that whole BTs and all that other stuff, that's all fanciful. That's all later on. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just crazy.
Yeah. In my book, in Relentless, which is my book, which does an illustrated version of the experience that I went through, of everything I needed to try and help free my daughter from this grip of Scientology. And I made a number of videos as well. I just had to get this out. This was part of my process of feeling I did enough in order to present possibilities to her to look at in ways that she can reach out and see her father, who always loved her, who was always there for her, to see why would he write a book? Because I figure, you know what? If nothing else, my grandson, who I've never met, who's I guess now 7.5, maybe 8, maybe one day he'll read it, and I dedicate it to him and my daughter and to everybody else out there. And it's part of the gratitude. Instead of being a neutral force, at least I now see the perspective of the truth of what this organization is and how they function. And if nothing else, I know I have helped hundreds of people who've watched my videos, who've read my book, who've talked to me. Because before, nobody here, I never talked about Scientology. I created a career where one time a reporter went deep enough to connect me to Scientology, which was when I had written a best-selling book on finance in 1987. And in 1987, I had billboards, I had radio network, I was in finance, I was one of the first original financial planners, certified what's called CFPs. Okay, so that was something that I loved it. I loved math. I loved finance. I loved all these things. Before Scientology, I was involved with all of these types of things in different ways. And the reporter who was doing a report on me found out my connection to Scientology. And it was a 5-page article in the Sunday magazine, lots of colored pictures. It was fucking awesome. Except they titled it "The Many Lives of Brian."
Oh, okay.
And they talked about my belief in past lives and other planets and my connection with Scientology. Now, crazy enough, my book then went to #1 in Florida. And so, as they say anything you want, just spell my name right. It actually, that might be one true datum that we learned. Wherever it originally came from, I don't know. I think it was Barnum and Bailey or something like that, some circus thing. But nevertheless, you know, the nature of each of us, of what their experiences us, and Mark's is different than mine, which is different than Janis's, and I can't imagine how anybody can even get involved today, because if any reasonable person would read all of the disclosures and all of the things that they have to sign, of signing away their rights and I mean, it's like, how do you, wow, you really got to be some great salesperson to get that up, or just, of course, just sign here, it's nothing, probably is what.
And of course, that didn't exist when you and I and Janis got involved.
Yeah.
That was nowhere around.
I mean, I can't imagine the level of paranoia that exists in all of these waivers that they ask for in order to CYA, cover their asses to make sure that you have no legal rights, and that basically whatever we do to you, you deserve it because you're a bad person. You're an
SUV. You pulled it in.
Yeah.
You pulled it in.
But Brian, here's an example. One of the people that are suing Scientology over the Danny Masterson thing, right? They're trying to get her into arbitration, you know, because she signed a paper that they made her sign because she was going to stay at the Fort Harrison Hotel to visit her friend Lisa Marie Presley. That's all she was going to do. She wasn't getting any services or anything. But because they said she signed this agreement that she should be subject to Scientology arbitration just to stay at the hotel. It's crazy.
Wow.
Well, it's crazy, or wow, they're really efficient in covering their ass, aren't they?
Yeah, that's clever. Very clever.
Well, and that's Miscavige. That's Miscavige, and that's the high-priced attorneys. That's the high-priced attorneys that they've paid millions and millions and millions of dollars for to achieve that. And it's, you know, that's how that happened. You know,
I met Miscavige and his sister when they first came to AOSH
in St. Hill. I was going to ask you if you met him there because you were there probably.
No. Okay.
They were little kids then. They were teenagers, young.
They were, but his sister and I were very close and very friendly.
Denise,
yeah. And in fact, Denise, when I moved to Florida and left the Sea Org, she wanted to move in with me here in Florida. We were a very brief item.
I understand.
Okay. I was very young then too, a lot younger. Yeah. But they were wild, and I still can't imagine, because I remember seeing David and her twin brother, because they're twins, to think of where he got to and how he got there and how he maintained. I'm just like flat. Wow.
Well, it's through the abuse.
Yeah, but no.
He had the drive, though. He had the evil drive to take over.
You have to have, not only that, I'm sorry, you have to have incredible talent to be able to create such a massive ongoing, and just look at that, from being able to accomplish what he did. Wow. Think about that. Mm-hmm. I'm amazed by it. I would never have, when seeing that little 14-year-old, he was 14 back then, okay, when I met him. That tells you when I was in St. Hill, by the way, because I don't remember, 70, 71. Just pretty
Well,
amazing.
it is. And look, I hate giving him credit for anything, but he did take over. However he did it, and we know how he did it. He took over. Nobody else challenged him. And he basically is still standing to this day,
I still
despite
can't
the
believe
fact
it.
that the emperor has no clothes. There are no people in Scientology. They buy buildings that are completely empty and spend millions of dollars on them, and people still donate money.
I
Okay.
know.
There's some
Well,
power there that's
Mark, it's
crazy, but
well
it's there.
beyond my ability to reason. They'd have to do a new logic series. We'll call it the illogic logic
Yeah.
of this world. It's insane, but
Yeah.
it's factual. And I'm just looking at
True.
it from it's a fact. And to be able to do that, I still don't get it.
Well, and I don't either, because I keep going, well, when's the karma or the overt motivator supposed to kick in?
Now we can have long conversations on karma and overt motivator sequences. I can give you the Nishkarm Karm Yoga perspective. It might be a little much, but show you that it's nothing. Those things are only, if you believe in it strong enough, they work.
Yeah.
But we won't get into
my personal feeling is that deep down inside, he's an unhappy person. Despite all of his wealth and power, he has to be miserable. He has nobody. He has no really close friends. Nobody he trusts. Everybody's against him. Everybody is a potential traitor.
When you cause so much pain for so many people, and you know it, and it's continual, and you don't even open up a dialogue in order to bring peace. No, the fear. The worst thing that you have to do, everything he does is build defenses.
Right.
He lives in
a secure fence. That's all he is.
In order to have that fear, to go so far as he has, to build all these defenses, that means that level of fear and terror inside of him, that's what manifests. So you can't get away from that. Whatever you defend against, you attack yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So this guy is attacking himself. And but again, there are worse. At least the people's throats aren't being killed, and they're not being invaded with missiles and machine guns. And I mean, this is an insane. I'm sorry, it's an insane fucking world. I've gotten over the idea of expecting anybody to be peaceful or honest or to them be loving. I mean, these are great ideals, and I love them, but it's not the reality of the world that we live in. And Hubbard, unfortunately, knew how to take advantage of that so well.
Listen, we're reaching the end here, but I wanted to ask can you let the viewers know like what you do now? Because I've got one of your books I can show, and just tell people what it is that you do now in your life. And I wanted to show, this is one of your books you've written, correct?
Yeah, that's already 15 years old. But my new books are about, really, I've looked into quantum embodiment, to looking in neuroscience, and my specialty is epigenetics, particularly intergenerational epigenetics, to see the new advances that are being made of the different, what we call intergenerational epigenetic tags, traumas that come from past generations that are coded into the DNA that will modify behavior and cause all sorts of different types of mental, emotional imbalances, combined with what I call quantum embodiment, which is understanding that you have ways of the way that you breathe, the way that you communicate, the way that you interact, the way that you clear away your own personal traumas in order to create a new mastery in your life. And my books are all at Amazon.com, and you go to Amazon.com, Brian Sheen, and I did a specialty book on the pandemic and what it was like to be in the lockdown for 2 years, and created a perspective, what I call CPSD, chronic pandemic stress disorder. My other book,
because you weren't even in the U.S. when the lockdown happened.
No, I was locked down in Peru. I've been traveling nonstop for the last 7 years. I've just come back now to the U.S. Because my renter of my house is gone, so I need to fix it up and then decide what I'm going to do. But I got caught in 8 months in Peru, in Lima, and I'll tell you, best 8 months of my life. I loved it. I really enjoyed myself. I wrote 2 books. Okay. I fell in love. I had a great 1.5 year love affair. Yeah, baby. I had a wonderful time. And then from there, I've made a lot of friends, and I have a lot of friends in Peru, in Colombia, Argentina, because I spend a lot of time down there. But now I'm back in the U.S., back in the USA, and in Florida, in South Florida. And I'm finishing my new book, which I'm excited to have out soon, which is called, interestingly enough, Past Lives, Present Mind Body, Future Family Destiny. The adventure of epigenetics intergenerationally. So to understand the impact of, we know, obviously for Janis, the impact. You were raised in a family. And I'd be real curious about what would motivate your parents and therefore grandparents. There had to be some type of lineage of connection to some need that was missing or some trauma that they were looking to solve or to heal, because they sure were dedicated to healing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that's a great positive, that you'd have parents that would be so committed to commit lifetimes in order to, no matter how misguided. It's a huge step for a human being.
No, and you are correct on that statement on my parents. There were things there that, you know, they needed to address on how they were raised.
Yeah. Well, listen, Brian, well, I've really enjoyed this hour. I mean, we definitely want to have you back because we want to talk about more things with you. But no, this has been wonderful, and we want to thank you for being here. I've got a little bit of business I got to take care of, and then we'll end off here. Okay. I want to let everybody know if you've enjoyed. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
No, I just appreciate just speaking with both of you. It's nice. We still have to catch up a little bit. I think I've met Janis before, but we have to go back and talk. And we'll see.
Yes,
we need to. Because I got your email that mentioned that, and I said I didn't get a chance to answer it yet, but we need to bring that up.
Okay.
That sounds great. All right. Anyway, just so the viewers know, if you've enjoyed this video or enjoy any of our shows, please subscribe to our channel. It helps get the message out to other people that want to see this sort of thing. The YouTube algorithm takes it, grabs it, and puts it on people's playlists. So please subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions or comments about anything that we've discussed here, please write them in the comment section. We check them all the time, and we will answer them. If you have questions for Brian, the next time we have him on, we will be happy to ask him that. And then also, if you want to donate to our channel, you can buy us a coffee. Go down into the description of the video. There's a click on the link there, and you can buy us 1, 2, 3, 10 coffees, whatever. Any money we get, it pretty much goes back into the channel. So we would appreciate that for that support. The other thing I wanted to mention briefly is if you want to be a member of our channel, we've got membership available. You hit the join button. Just for as little as $3.99 a month, you can be a Peeling supporter. There's no contract, cancel at any time, but basically it just helps us, again, show the support, as well as allows us to continue doing these videos. So if you're interested in becoming a member, there's various levels of membership. Just click on that join button, and you can become a member of our channel. Yes, Janis.
And please rock slam that like button.
Yeah. Hit that like button, rock slam it.
Peel back the onion. Yes.
Anyway, I've enjoyed this, Brian. Thank you so much. Thanks, Janis. And until next time, everybody, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.